Hello and welcome back to Cooking the Books with me, Gilly Smith, the podcast which digs a little deeper into the minds behind the best of the food books through 4 food moments. This week I'm with Joe Woodhouse to talk about cookery courses, food photography, and launching your very first book in the middle of a war when your wife is Ukrainian food writer Olia Hercules.
I actually posted a few recipes or talked about a book, and I got quite a few messages from people saying, you know what, I've been completely consumed by this. I just cooked this recipe and it distracted me for half an hour or whatever, and it was really great because it took my mind off. And I was like, okay, that's at least there's something positive.
His book, Your Daily Veg, has been lauded by Nigella, Anna Jones, and Cooking the Book's favourite Rachel Roddy, and is packed with vegetarian recipes inspired by his career to date styling and photographing food from all over the world, but also by a lifetime of being a vegetarian. I began by asking him to take us back to that moment when, aged 10, he told his family of farmers that he was giving up meat.
We were just watching a TV programme in the evening, and someone was, taking the mick out of his wife for turning vegetarian, and it just set some cogs kind of going in my brain, and I sort of thought, well, I want to kind of step back, have a think about this, and then reapproach, meat and fish. And I kind of never found my way back. The more I kind of read or didn't kind of eat meat and was cooking other things, I kind of went further down the rabbit hole of not needing to, and kind of being excited by, other ingredients. I mean, there's still masses of things I haven't eaten or tried.
But when you're 10, that challenge is given to you, probably your mother, maybe your father, and in my case, when my kids went vegetarian at age 6,
wow.
It was me who suddenly had to come up with all the ideas and cook loads of different meals in one sitting. So what was the reality of that? What did your mum or who was cooking most in your family? Or did you? Maybe you did at age 10.
Well, it was given to my mother for a little bit, but then a couple of nights in, she'd made this big effort of making this black-eyed bean pie, black-eyed beans being one of her favourite things, and she kind of made this mega pie for it must have fed about 20 people. And we sat down to dinner and we kind of cut into it, and something was a bit wrong. It looked a bit grey. And she'd forgotten to soak the beans before cooking it. So it's, I think, technically poisonous. And I sort of, at that point, I started feeling a bit bad. And my dad kind of soldiered on eating it. We were kind of like, well, we don't fancy it. But so then I kind of set about trying to do simple things myself. At 10, you're a bit more, you can kind of do some eggs, or you can kind of chop some things to make a salad. And we used to watch a lot of cookery shows back then, and my parents were really into food. Their holidays, or if they'd go away for the night, they'd just come into London to a restaurant to go eat, and my gran would look after us or something. On the rare occasion they would go off, but and it's kind of fascinating that's what they'd sort of spend their free time doing, is going to someone's restaurant. That's what they're kind of excited about, and they'd go off and go do this. And as a young child, you kind of it's so sort of interesting that they're so excited and kind of wanting to go in and talking about it afterwards, and they've just kind of gone off to eat someone's food is kind of such a wild thing.
Yeah,
I used to have a full cooked breakfast every morning with 3 different kinds of meat and everything. We're kind of proper farmers, kind of set up for the day, and and it just be kind of all really good quality, all kind of local, and it just naturally was that way, because that's just in the countryside, and that's how we were. But
yeah, now my kids were just a little bit more demanding. That their activism, aged 6, was much more important than my ability to make something out of a mushroom again. What kind of farm was it that you grew up on?
Predominantly arable, but with farms you kind of inherit certain bits. So there's a few cattle, and then a lot of turkeys, chicken and geese that we used to do for Christmas.
Yeah.
So that used to be a Christmas job of plucking to... actually, I used to do the geese.
Was that post-vegetarian or pre-vegetarian?
Pre-vegetarian.
Right.
I did a little bit then after, just kind of... Because it's all part of the food system, but it wasn't... There's no kind of squeamishness, because that was just what you did.
Right.
And we, from a young age, we were always... that's the reality of the food system.
Yeah. That is what I find so interesting. A lot of people turn vegetarian. My eldest daughter turned vegetarian at 6 because I was taking her around an amazing pig farm where these pigs were able to just root around and have fresh apples that had just fallen freshly off the trees. And I was saying how brilliant this was. She thought it was absolutely unacceptable that they should end up in sausages. But that's because she didn't grow up in a farm. She didn't grow up around farm animals. You did, and presumably, you know, your family kept them pretty well. So was there a compassion with the farm animals around you that turned you vegetarian, or was it just that your body did better with vegetables?
I don't know. We ate so much meat before I was 10 that I kind of had enough to sort of do me for a while. But I do feel lighter and brighter, and it is one of those things that you kind of have lots of energy. And I'd kind of just talking to someone recently about it, and they sort of just do good quality meat, one meal a week now, and they're sort of saying how good they feel. I mean, each person to their own, but just find good stuff, you know, cook it kind of simply and don't do too much to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that in British food culture, we can just replace whole ways of eating fairly easily. And it tends to be some kind of activism or compassion or active choice to change our eating habits. But, you know, you are married to Ukrainian food writer Olia Hercules, and meat is very definitely within that Ukrainian culture. You know, how easy was it to be vegetarian in a family like that?
I think her mum really loved the challenge, or, you know, not so much a challenge, it's just a kind of easy segue. I mean, everyone has allotments and there's loads of produce, kind of, you know, especially when you go in the summertime, it's just like bursting. You just go off and go pick kind of what you're going to have for that meal. And most things kind of, I mean, Ollie always maintains that, there's mainly vegetarian anyway, which I don't think is necessarily, you know, there's a lot of bone broths or things that, you know, it's kind of, to a meat eater, maybe it feels quite veggie, or like there's a lot of vegetables included. It's a very good balance, I think, is maybe more correct. But but it lends itself to them being, I mean, there's a big passion for mushrooms, and everyone kind of, it gets so hot in the summer that they just slice and leave them out, and they dry outside in the sun. But so there's masses of mushrooms that can kind of make up mushroom broths and things. It's a good substitute. You know, I don't know, not necessarily substitute, just a different option. I think that's something that it shouldn't be that you're lacking. It's not, you're kind of just doing something different. I think is maybe more of a mindset that people is an interesting thing to get into, because it's not like you're missing out on something. It's just the meat should be a treat, I guess, is kind of a thing. And I think that there is that, the Ukrainian side, that you have big family meals on the weekends and people come over and they kind of, you know, they because they keep ducks and things, they kind of killed a couple of ducks, roast them, you know, and kind of have that, and it's a big celebration, and then you kind of make other things from the carcass and things afterwards as you do. And I think there's still a more traditional way of eating like that, rather than this kind of meat all the time, every day, you know, every meal, kind of convenience side of things.
Yeah, I mean, meat has a cultural place rather than our, you know, going down the Tesco's and picking up a shrink-wrapped bit of white stuff that nobody even associates with an animal, let alone how it lived and what it's supposed to taste like. I'm very interested, Joe, because I have just started a Leith's online cookery course last week. And I want to talk to you about how cookery courses can change your path. I have no idea which path I'm going to go on when I finish this course in 6 months' time. But you did a cookery course in your 20s, didn't you? Which one, and what did it do for you?
So I wanted to change my path from the university course I was doing that I was a bit disillusioned with. And so I wanted to go to catering college, but I thought that I'd probably be better off at the Vegetarian Society doing a course there than going to traditional catering college in Scarborough, being a vegetarian, which I think was the correct thing to do, and get a basis. And I did a diploma there over a series of months, probably similar, about 9 months, and then just started working and sort of got into kitchens and just kind of learning on the job as well, and reading a lot. And I mean, back then when, you know, TV shows, there's so many cookery shows were kind of blowing up, so it was just trying to get as much knowledge and cram as much in as possible. You did courses in, but then there was a lot of emphasis on doing at home. So every day I do 2 new techniques or 2 dishes, say, that I hadn't made before. So I kind of was really enjoyed kind of that sort of being empowered, where you're kind of, you go off, teach yourself, come back, show us what you've learned, kind of thing.
And was that where you started taking photographs? Did you have to take photographs of your food and show them to people? Because this is pre-Instagram, wasn't it?
Yeah, funny enough, I've still got them somewhere where upended some cannelloni with some asparagus and an onion butter sauce I made or something. I found them, so Olia found them as well. She's like, what's this? So early examples of my food photography. I mean, it's extremely dated. But I think it's part of the presentation and things, and talk about what you've done, because they were training you to go into restaurants. So you are supposed to be looking at presentation and, and how to kind of best show off the food and things as well.
That I find fascinating, when you're presenting your food as something that, would look great on Instagram had it existed at the time, you're thinking very differently. And that did presumably lead you to a very successful career as a food photographer, which is how you got to produce your first book. What was the relationship then between learning to cook and producing something that is popping off the page and selling other people's books at first? I mean, you did all Olia's photography for most of her books.
The latest ones, yeah. I mean, for me, when I was in the restaurant and things, it was a large part of me. What I was doing was helping design the dishes and the presentation, because I really kind of enjoyed that side of it. I mean, a lot of the time I'll start at the beginning, kind of think of what the end plating's like. So you kind of, when you're chopping, your ingredients, you kind of already kind of have a mind to it. When I left the kitchen to go do photography, it was more to get wider exposure to food and learn about more cuisines and dishes. And so I started doing styling as well as the photography assisting, and which practically meant I had more work, so I had a livable income. And then styling's amazing, because you get put on a job and it's like, okay, we're going to do food of Spain, so then you just kind of crash course in Spanish cooking, and you kind of have to do all these things, and it's such a good way to kind of learn. And you've also got to then think about, as you say, how that's going to show on camera. I mean, I trained with Jason Lowe, so it's always like you want to eat the food afterwards, because it's such a waste otherwise. And also that's kind of part of it, because everyone's so into the food, you want to try it, see what the flavours are and things. And so the only thing we kind of do is slightly hold back kind of overcooking, certain things, so the colours are still kind of bright. But on the whole, it's sort of cook it well, shoot it quickly, and then eat it. It's a kind of ethos.
And you're learning massively, aren't you? It's like a crash course in so many different types of dishes, but also trends, Joe. When you're thinking with your eyes and you're capturing stuff to entice people to buy new cookbooks or try new things, you are trend setting, aren't you? You're the cool hunter. What do you see now that is coming up? I mean, obviously all the food in your book, which we'll talk about in a minute through your food moments, is bang on trend. But what do you see that is coming up that we might be cooking, say, next year?
What I want to come up, because I always kind of look to the past, and sort of really good examples of Mexican food is what I want to come up. I see that kind of growing.
Like what? What kind of Mexican foods have we not seen already? We've got so many at Oaxaca, and every high street is absolutely full of Mexican food. What haven't we seen? Some
of the more regional things, I think, and some of the not so known, kind of off the beaten track. It's somewhere that I would love to go to. I think that's kind of, it's just my... that's what's coming out as well. I would love to travel around Mexico eating, for a month or so, and just kind of really get stuck in. But it's just, for me, a lot with traveling, being vegetarian, you get a lot of what people would eat normally, as opposed to the celebration dishes or what they think you want as a tourist, and which involves a lot of meat, which is fine. But it's those kind of everyday dishes that I think there's quite a lot of magic in a lot of the time, that are just kind of just really simply done, but that just kind of you haven't necessarily seen before, and just kind of different ways of cooking things. Or Olia has it a lot with it in Ukraine, where you have from village to village, or household to household, it's the same dish, but it's whatever spin someone's grandmother's put on or they've put on, and there's those little nuances, I think, that are kind of so inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, something that's very grounded, but then it has its own little personal tweaks. Let's go through your food moments. You've chosen as your first food moment the brown sauce, which you developed in lockdown with your son, Wilf. You were strapping him to your chest as a baby and cooking over the hob. Is that illegal?
Well, yeah, he was small enough that he was, before he'd kind of get anything leaning over the hob too much. I mean, I used to do like a kind of ready, steady cook kind of cookery show for him and just narrate through what we were doing. Both of us, well, obviously, he was born in January and then we went into lockdown. So but we still had to kind of work. So I'd end up having him in the days and then write the book in the evening so Olia could work in the day. But I just had to do some development and different things, but also kind of entertain him. And he just like loved it so much. And he'd kind of listen to everything you're saying, kind of talk through, tell him what ingredients are, what you're doing, and then he kind of put his hand on my arm as I was chopping to kind of help me along, and kind of really getting involved. And then we got him a little tower, so he now stands alongside and kind of helps cook. Got him a knife for Christmas, and then but he just gets involved, and it's great. I mean, he then tastes everything, he eats everything. He kind of it works really well because he kind of he sort of feels involved and he's tasting along with it and he knows what's kind of gone into it, and then he sees the end dish and he kind of puts all the dots together. He loves the brown sauce now, and ever bring it out at breakfast and things. He just had to pile it on.
So tell us about this brown sauce then. It's a typical sort of condiment, but, why is it featuring in your vegetarian book? It's something that you would not normally put with some bacon or something, wouldn't you? Yeah. Well, I'm a massive lover of condiments of any kind, but I wanted to develop a brown sauce. I've been meaning to do it for years, and I was like, this is having a cookbook deal is kind of the opportunity to realise this. A lot of the idea in the book is to use things as templates and kind of put in whatever veg you've got, or take it a different direction, or if you don't like parsley, use this, use what you like instead. And it's kind of it's trying to show people that you can do things, it doesn't have to be that tricky to kind of do certain things like that. And a fresh made brown sauce is worlds away from a squeezy bottle. Let's not mention any brands. Yeah, but it's also about giving people a way of being more creative with some very basic vegetables, isn't it? It's about just doing a quick little stir fry and then giving it a flavour bomb, as Sotolengi calls it. Your second food moment is a series of recipes that you've plucked from the book that you've picked up along your way as a food photographer. Now, we've already talked about accessing so many cuisines and cultures through your work, but just mention some of these actual recipes that you've picked up, because they do come from all over the place. Where the sweet potato ginger stew, for example, where did you pick that up?
Yeah, that's the kind of, for me, the most sort of luxurious part of being a food photographer, and getting to travel and go to different countries and photograph foods, people cooking the foods, like just learning, just constantly learning. And it's such a, wonderful thing. The sweet potato stew I was on a job in Brazil and staying with Jason, who was directing. He'd moved onto Moving Images as well, and I was taking stills on the shoot. Just staying at his house, and it was with his then partner, Paola Carosella. She is a well-known chef, and she was just cooking for us each night when we came back. Kind of go out at 6 a.m, get back kind of 6, 7 p.m, and then sit down to these amazing meals every night. And it just struck me. It was a kind of looser soup kind of dish. I just made it a bit less liquidy, just to make it a bit more substantial for our UK climate rather than the Brazilian climate. So in that kind of week, just learnt so much from Paola, just, in cooking, her techniques and different things. And it's just, that's kind of swapping ideas or telling people about, I saw this the other day and how to kind of use this veg or, whatever ingredient it is. So much fun, different people.
sitting around chatting, squatting and chatting. You know, women have been doing it forever, you know, just sharing each other's recipes.
Yeah.
I remember doing a film way back when for Channel 4 called Food File, where we were talking to a whole load of nonnas about how to make the perfect tomato sauce. And, you know, they were all chatting away in Italian about, well, they were arguing, let's be honest, in Italian over, you know, their different tomato sauces. And I didn't understand a word, but I did understand everything. You know, it was so clear. That's what women mainly have done since the beginning of time, swapping ideas and arguing their case. You know, the aubergine and tomato seed dressing, is there a lot of chat about where did that come from?
I was on a job in Tel Aviv, and there's a restaurant that we actually ate at twice because it was so good, called Port Said. And it's the same guy that owns all the Miznon restaurants. There's just a simplicity to the food. It's just really, you know, just really good produce, kind of small plates of sort of really delicious things just coming out that kind of you put together to form your kind of own table laden with all these different dishes. But it's just so many from those two meals I just kind of remember so clearly, because it's just all the flavours are really bright and singing. It's more than the sum of its parts. I mean, I've got to say, actually, there's quite a lot of places in Tel Aviv, a lot of influence from there that was just such a kind of light touch, but kind of with really strong, clear vision kind of coming through. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Peas, broad beans and feta. Just the words together in a recipe in your third food moment. Delightful. I want to eat that right now. You used to eat it to satiate your hunger with your brothers while waiting for dinner. Why did you choose this one?
Well, this is here. It's trying to get Olia to grow peas again. Because it is so good. I don't know why she sort of thinks they're a bit fussy.
They just do it by themselves.
Yeah, I know. But we just run out to the garden, pick a load of peas and broad beans. I kind of potted them all, blanched them, threw them on top of this block of feta, dressed it. It was just more as a kind of snack, antipasti kind of thing, while we were waiting for Olia I think she was putting Wilf to bed, to come and, down for dinner. But I think why sort of putting that in just because is that a lot of the book is these kind of dishes where they've kind of just naturally occur, because it's like, oh, what have I got? Oh, we've got a load of peas and broad beans. We'll just quickly do something. And then they're kind of like, oh, that was actually really good. Let's make a note of it. Those impromptu moments, kind of something great happens. And it's just like, yeah, let's keep that.
The best ideas always come from that sort of, you know, spur of the moment. That looks lovely. Let's just put it on the table and feed people. It's kind of the attitude of Towpath, isn't it? And your fourth food moment is Towpath's corn on the cob cornbread from when you were working there as a chef. I mean, the interview I did with Laurie and Laura, I think is one of my absolute favourites from last year. They are really properly special people, aren't they? In a very special place that they've created. Must have been wonderful to work there.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of the largest influences on my cooking and my approach, and just learning so much. And just, I mean, both Laurie and Laura are sort of wealth of knowledge, and just the people and experiences they've had and the kind of knowledge they can pass on. I mean, it just felt like a privilege working there the whole time and cooking. I mean, it's pretty close to, I think it'd only been open a couple of months when I turned up. And we used to do big event, you know, massive weddings, and we're cooking paella for 200 people and things. And then, but it's just kind of loads of outdoor events. Like, you kind of have to set up, work around the problems, and, you know, kind of just make food. And it's just a lot of cooking on fire and barbecuing. The corn on the cob thing was, we used to do it on the weekends. We just set up a barbecue on the side of the canal, and just as people were walking past, we could, you know, kind of see what you're cooking, kind of talk to you about it. Obviously, everyone loves to gather around a barbecue and chat about, you know, what coal you're using and wood and things. But it's just a really fun way, because you're actually cooking the food with someone standing there who's about to eat it next to you. It's a step further than an open kitchen, I guess. What
is so amazing about it, Joe? Because people talk about it in glowing terms. I mean, Keira Knightley says it's the reason why she still lives in London. I mean, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? I just talking to Laurie and Laura, you know, I really did think that they got the meaning of life sorted. They just have such an incredible take on generosity and simplicity. That's what I picked up from them. You say that they shaped your cooking and your food so much. What is it that they imparted?
But yeah, I think that, I mean, generosity is, just the simplicity does sum it up. It's just there's an excitement and an interest in food on such a deep level, or just looking after people as well. And the whole thing where there's never been any takeaway coffee cups or things, because the ethos is like the Italian thing. You have a minute or two to stop and drink a coffee. Everyone's fraught and kind of rushing in and out of work and things. It's that kind of taking a moment to just slow down and take a breath. And I think that kind of goes through to the whole ethos of the place. It's I think it's something in that side of London. You're by the canal and you kind of don't expect it as well, and it's just kind of, it's gently kind of taken hold of that area in in such a way. I mean, everyone always says it feels quite like Berlin, but yeah, I think it is in that kind of quite bohemian kind of vibe. Just loved working there. It was such a great environment to be in. The staff lunches used to be you pick dishes off the menu. You're eating the food that you're cooking and making, and so I think that's quite an important thing as well, where it's all about quality of life for everyone rather than making as much money. But yeah, it's always a joy to go back.
It's a very difficult time, I imagine, for you to bring out your very first cookbook. I'm sure you put an enormous amount of work into it, and then of course the war in Ukraine literally eclipsed everything. Must have completely changed your life. I noticed you're doing amazing stuff for Cook for Ukraine. You cooked with Jamie Oliver last week. You're watching your wife turn into a proper champion. She always was, of course, but you must be so proud. But in the middle of it all, you're bringing out your book. How does that feel?
Well, you're slightly apprehensive and kind of you don't want to lessen any other message and what the other work that's being done, but then there's I actually posted a few recipes or talked about a book, and I got quite a few messages from people saying, you know what, I've been completely consumed by this, and I just cooked this recipe and it distracted me for half an hour or whatever, and it was really great because it took my mind off. And I was like, okay, that's at least there's something positive. And that's kind of, it's not to make light of anything else, but it's I think it is important to take a breath and a moment, and also make sure you're eating and looking after yourself as well, because as I know with Olia, it's it's non-stop, because it's just trying to problem solve and help in any way you can.
Yeah, I can see from Olia's posts that she's not eating, and I feel so for her and so many of the Ukrainians who are victim to this awful tragedy. But at the same time, I'm part of a group of women who are going around all the village halls around East Sussex, and we're cooking wonderful Ukrainian-inspired food for 70 people a couple of weeks back, 60 people next week, and people can't get enough of it because, I've never seen all these people together in one place, but they are sitting down and they are eating together and they are eating beautiful food. And ultimately that is what it's all about, isn't it? It is getting together to raise awareness and funds, of course, for Ukraine, but to also remind people of the depth and the richness of the culture that is being absolutely decimated. But that will live on. Can you see that from your position, from absolutely within the heartbeat of it?
I mean, the response from everyone, from people, is just incredible. You never would have thought it'd be such taken hold in such a way it has. I've been taking Wolf off to little trips just to kind of give Olia a break and things, and you kind of sending pictures to Olia's parents of some coastal town. They're flying a Ukrainian flag at the town hall, and which I think they find so important, because the fear is that people get a bit oversaturated after a few weeks, so that it's kind of just kept going. It's so heartwarming. I mean, the bake for Ukraine, that we got there about an hour into it, and it kind of pretty much nearly sold out of everything. You kind of just got queues down the street, and it's just incredible to see. And so, so much done, so many things still happening, so much money raised, and just going to a really good place, which hopefully we'll start seeing some more positives soon.
Thanks for listening, and you can read the transcripts of the show at gillysmith.com and just click on podcasts. Please do get in touch on social media. I'm at Cooking the Books with Gilly Smith on Instagram, where you can follow my adventures in cookery as well as I spend the next 6 months at Leith's online. Check the show notes and on Instagram for full details of how to follow the links to get special Cooking the Books discounts on some of the Leith's cookery courses. And I'll see you next week.